You don't have to rush, she murmured on the stairs, unaware who was listening behind the door. The bag slipped slightly as he adjusted his grip, the paper handles biting into his fingers. The stairwell smelled faintly of cleaning product and something warm from upstairs. She was already a few steps ahead when she slowed down and said it, almost to herself. You don't have to rush. Her voice was low, careful, like she didn't want to take up too much space. He nodded without answering, even though she wasn't looking. A door creaked somewhere above them. Then silence. Just the sound of shoes on concrete and plastic shifting inside the bags. He focused on the steps, counting them without meaning to, while she paused again, hand on the railing. The light flickered once. The building felt hollow, as if every sound stayed longer than it should. He moved slower, not sure why his chest suddenly felt tight. She adjusted the bag she was carrying, clearly heavier than she expected, and he reached out instinctively, taking it from her without asking. Their fingers brushed for half a second. She didn't pull away. It's fine, she said softly, though he hadn't said anything yet. Her breath sounded uneven, like she'd been holding it longer than necessary. He noticed how carefully she avoided turning around. Behind one of the doors, a shadow shifted. Small feet pressed closer to the wood. Whoever was there stayed perfectly still, as if movement itself might break something. The stairwell swallowed the quiet, making it feel deliberate. He felt suddenly exposed, like this simple climb mattered more than it should. The bags seemed heavier now, not because of their weight, but because of the pause between steps. When they reached the next landing, she stopped completely, not blocking his way, not moving forward either, just standing there, listening to the building breathe around them. He waited, unsure if he was meant to say something, unsure if silence was the point. Somewhere behind the door, someone listened too, holding on to every word that wasn't spoken. He hadn't planned on stopping that evening. The building was just another shortcut between the street and the bus stop, a place he passed through without thinking. Lately, he preferred it that way. Movement without attachment. If he kept walking, if he didn't linger, there was less room for memories to surface. Less space for thoughts he had learned to keep quiet. These days, his life was built around routines that didn't ask much of him. Wake up, work, come home, repeat. Conversation stayed polite and shallow. He carried things for people when asked, fixed small problems when it was easier than saying no, then disappeared again. It wasn't kindness he feared. It was what followed when people started expecting him to stay. Loss had taught him that staying always came with a price. He didn't talk about it, not because it was dramatic, but because it was ordinary in the most painful way. Something ended, quietly. Someone left, permanently. Since then, he had learned how to be useful without being present, how to help without being needed. It felt safer that way. On the stairs, with the bags cutting into his palms, that balance felt thinner than usual. The woman's voice lingered longer than it should have. The pause between steps felt deliberate, almost intimate. He told himself it didn't mean anything, that this was just another small favor, another moment that would dissolve as soon as he stepped back outside. If you've ever found yourself hesitating in moments like that, caught between leaving and staying, you already understand more than you think. Stories like this aren't about dramatic turns, but about the quiet seconds where everything could change without anyone noticing. If you want to stay with moments like these, and with the people inside them, you're welcome to subscribe and keep listening. The next evening, he found himself slowing down as he approached the same building, even though he told himself it was a coincidence. The sky had already dimmed, and the windows glowed unevenly, some warm, some cold. He could have taken the longer route home. He didn't. Instead, he stepped inside, feeling that faint shift in his chest again, the one he refused to name. She was there, struggling with the door this time, one hand full, the other balancing a bag against her hip. He reached for it without asking, holding the door open as she slipped past. She gave a small nod, not quite a smile, like gratitude was something she measured carefully. "Thanks," she said, and nothing else followed. It felt like an agreement. The stairwell greeted them with the same hollow quiet. He walked beside her now, not behind, adjusting his pace to match hers. The bags were lighter tonight, but the air felt heavier. Halfway up, she hesitated, then handed him another bag. "Only if you're already going up," she added quickly, as if afraid of crossing an invisible line. He could have said no. The thought came clearly, almost sharply. Saying no would have kept everything simple. Instead, he nodded and took the bag, feeling that familiar resistance give way inside him. A small decision, barely worth noticing, yet it lingered as they climbed, step after step. They didn't talk much. A comment about the weather. A quiet laugh when one of the bags bumped his knee. Nothing personal. Nothing that could be held on to. Still, when they reached her floor, she didn't rush to take the bags back. She stood there, keys in her hand, as if the moment hadn't reached its end yet. From behind the door, there was a faint sound, something small, quickly stilled. She glanced toward it, then back at him. "It's usually faster when I do it alone," she said, almost apologetically. He wasn't sure if she meant the stairs or something else entirely. He handed the bags over slowly, one by one, careful not to rush. The phrase from the night before echoed in his mind, unwanted and persistent. He waited for her to turn the handle. She didn't. Instead, she looked at the bags, then at the floor, as if organizing her thoughts instead of her groceries. "I'll see you around," he said finally, already preparing himself to step away. She nodded again, the same controlled gesture. "Yeah, probably," she replied. The door opened just enough for the bags to pass through. As he turned to leave, a small hand appeared briefly, gripping the edge of the door before disappearing again. He paused, then kept walking. His heart beat faster than the climb required, and he didn't know why. Outside, the night felt colder. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment longer than necessary, replaying the ordinary scene in his mind. Nothing important had happened. And yet, he couldn't shake the sense that something small had just been set in motion, something that wouldn't stop simply because he walked away. The routine formed quietly, without any conversation that could be pointed to as the beginning. Some evenings they met on the stairs, other nights near the mailbox or by the front door. It was never planned. He helped when he was there, stepped back when he wasn't. The building learned the rhythm before they did. One night, rain followed him inside, dripping from his jacket onto the tiled floor. She was already waiting by the stairs, holding a single bag, lighter than usual. "I almost made it," she said, more to herself than to him. He took the bag anyway. She didn't stop him this time. They climbed slower than usual. Her steps were careful, measured, as if she were deciding something with every stair. Halfway up, she stopped and rested her hand on the railing. He waited without asking. The silence between them stretched, uncomfortable but not empty. "I'm not very good at asking," she said suddenly. Her voice was steady, but the words felt rehearsed, like she had practiced them before and still didn't trust them. He stayed where he was, eyes on the steps, giving her space to stop if she needed to. She exhaled slowly. "People think help means weakness," she continued, "or that it comes with something attached." She shrugged, though the movement didn't reach her shoulders. "Once, when I really needed it, everyone had an opinion." She didn't say what those opinions were. She didn't have to. He tightened his grip on the bag, feeling the paper crease. He wanted to say something reassuring, something that might ease the tension. Instead, he nodded, letting the gesture speak for him. Words felt too heavy for the narrow stairwell. "There was a time," she went on, "when I accepted help and never heard the end of it." She glanced back at him briefly, then away. "After that, I learned to manage. Even if it takes longer. Even if it hurts." Her hand pressed harder against the railing. From behind the door above them, there was a faint sound, soft, almost curious. She didn't look toward it this time. He wondered how much had been heard before, how much was always heard. "I don't want to owe anyone," she said, quieter now. "And I don't want to be talked about." The words hung in the air, fragile and exposed. He felt the weight of them settle somewhere deep in his chest. They reached her floor, and she didn't immediately reach for the bag. Instead, she stood there, as if deciding whether the climb had cost her more than the effort. He waited, heart steady but heavy, resisting the urge to fill the silence. When she finally took the bag, her fingers brushed his again. This time, she didn't pull back. "Thank you," she said, looking up at him briefly. It wasn't gratitude alone. It was permission, cautious and incomplete. As he walked away, he realized the connection hadn't grown louder. It had grown clearer. And somehow, that felt more dangerous than if she had said nothing at all. The shift didn't happen all at once. It arrived in pieces, scattered across ordinary moments. A door held open a little longer. A bag already waiting at the bottom of the stairs. A pause that suggested expectation. None of it was spoken aloud, but he felt it each time he entered the building, like the air itself had learned to anticipate him. One evening, as he reached the second floor, he noticed the door at the end of the hall was slightly open, just enough to catch a sliver of light. He slowed without realizing it. From inside, there was a faint shuffle, then stillness. He didn't knock. He didn't announce himself. He simply continued upward, aware now that his presence was not invisible. She met him on the landing, already holding 2 bags. "I was going to try it alone," she said, not convincingly. He took one, then the other. Their exchange had become practiced, almost ritualistic. Yet something about the way she watched the door before turning back to him made his chest tighten. As they climbed, he heard it again. A small sound behind them. Not footsteps. Breathing. The kind that stops suddenly when it realizes it might be noticed. He remembered the first night, the shadow behind the door, the way silence had felt intentional. The memory settled into place, not as a question, but as an answer. "She listens," he said quietly, more statement than accusation. He kept his eyes forward. For a moment, he thought he had overstepped. Then she nodded barely. "She always has," she replied. There was no embarrassment in her voice, only acceptance. He understood then that he hadn't been overheard by accident. He had been part of something observed carefully, measured for safety. Every step he took, every pause, every moment he chose not to leave had been noticed. Not judged. Watched. "I don't mind," he added after a moment. It was the first thing he'd said that mattered. She didn't answer right away. The stairs seemed longer, quieter, as if the building itself was waiting. "It's easier when she knows what to expect," she said finally. "She's learned to listen before trusting." The words landed softly, but they carried weight. He felt them press against his own history, the habits he'd built to survive. They reached her floor, and this time the door opened wider. A small face appeared, curious but unafraid. The child didn't speak. She simply watched him with an attention that felt startlingly adult. He offered a small nod, unsure what else to do. The child nodded back, just as seriously. In that exchange, something settled. The fear he had sensed from the beginning wasn't about him. It was about need. About the danger of depending on anyone at all. He recognized it because he had lived inside it for years. When he left that night, the door closed gently behind him. No hurry. No urgency. Just the quiet acknowledgement that he had been part of the story from the start, whether he had known it or not. The pattern had settled into something unspoken but precise. She never asked. Not once. The bags were always close enough to notice, never close enough to demand. And he always noticed. He lifted, held, waited, then left. That was the balance. Acceptance without dependence. Help without permanence. It worked because neither of them tried to change it. Some evenings, their timing felt intentional, though neither admitted it. She adjusted her pace so he could catch up. He slowed just enough to stay beside her. When they reached her floor, the exchange remained the same, a quiet handoff, a brief pause, then distance restored. The child watched from behind the door, learning the rhythm better than either adult. Nothing was promised. That was the safety of it. The help ended where the stairs ended. He didn't cross thresholds. She didn't invite him to. The building held their connection the way it held echoes, contained, temporary, controlled. The message came late at night. A short sentence. His sister's name. Their parents' address. No explanation needed. He stared at the phone longer than necessary, feeling the familiar tightening in his chest. Responsibility had a way of returning without warning, and this one couldn't be delayed. He left early the next morning. Different city. Smaller house. Familiar smells. His parents moved slower now, each task requiring patience and repetition. He cooked, cleaned, listened to stories he already knew. At night, he lay awake on a narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about stairs that weren't there. The days blended together. Medication sorted. Appointments kept. Silence filled with practical noise. Caring for them felt heavy but grounding, like stepping back into an old role he never fully left. Still, there were moments, standing at the sink, folding blankets, when his mind drifted back to a quiet stairwell and a voice telling him not to rush. Back at the building, the woman adjusted. She carried fewer bags. She planned more carefully. When she struggled, she reminded herself she had done worse alone. The child noticed the absence immediately. Questions were asked once, then not again. Listening replaced asking. Their routine shifted inward. Meals were quieter. Bedtime stretched longer. The child lingered near the door more often, as if sound might travel differently if waited for properly. The woman felt the familiar tension return, the one that came when support vanished without warning. She told herself it was temporary. She always did. A week later, he returned. The bus ride felt longer than before. When he stepped off, the building rose ahead of him, unchanged. Same windows, same entrance. He adjusted his jacket, heart beating faster than the walk required. He crossed the street slowly, noticing details he'd ignored before. The light in the stairwell was on. A shadow passed behind one of the windows. He stopped at the curb, something tightening in his chest again, not with fear this time, but with surprise. He stood there, facing the building, realizing that whatever waited inside wasn't part of the routine anymore. And for the first time, he didn't know whether he was arriving or coming back. The landlord's voice stayed calm the entire time, which somehow made it worse. Papers were checked, dates repeated, explanations offered again and again. The week away had been enough. The room he used to call his was already spoken for. Someone else's name now sat where his had been. He stood there longer than necessary, as if time might bend out of courtesy. He tried once more. Not dramatically. Not angrily. He mentioned the years. The consistency. The silence he'd always kept. The landlord listened, nodded, and shook his head. Rules were rules. The space had been promised. It wasn't personal. It never was. The finality arrived gently, but it arrived all the same. Outside, he sat on the steps with his bag at his feet. The building no longer felt like an anchor. It felt borrowed. Temporary. He checked his phone, scrolling without reading, feeling the weight of a choice he hadn't made yet, but already sensed coming. He thought about his parents' house, the narrow bed, the quiet mornings. He thought about starting over somewhere else, somewhere anonymous. That version of his life still existed. It was available. Safe. Empty. He stood, slung the bag over his shoulder, and walked, not away from the building entirely, but toward a direction that felt both familiar and unplanned. His feet carried him before his mind agreed. When she opened the door, surprise crossed her face quickly, replaced by something careful. He didn't step inside. He explained, briefly. No details. Just enough. She listened without interrupting, hands folded, eyes steady. The child appeared behind her, instantly attentive. "I was just saying goodbye," he said, though he wasn't sure to whom. He shifted his weight, already preparing to leave again. The words felt practiced, protective. The child reached out and held the edge of his shirt, small fingers curling into the fabric, as if testing whether it would disappear. "Stay for dinner," she said. It wasn't a question. It was quiet, direct, unafraid. The woman froze for half a second. Then she placed her hand over the child's. "You can," she added softly, not quite meeting his eyes. "If you want." The invitation came from both of them now, layered, fragile, real. He looked down at the child, then back at her. The hallway seemed to narrow, focusing everything into that small space between them. This was the moment he'd been avoiding. Not the loss of a room, but the risk of staying. He took a breath, longer than necessary. And for reasons he couldn't yet explain, he said no. A month later, the apartment had settled into a new rhythm. Nothing about it looked transformed, yet everything felt adjusted. The man moved through the rooms with an ease that surprised even him, placing his shoes by the door, rinsing a cup before leaving it in the sink. He slept without setting alarms he didn't need. The building no longer felt borrowed. It felt lived in, gently, without ceremony. At the small kitchen table, conversation drifted the way it always did now, casual, unforced. Someone mentioned that first night, the one where he'd stood in the hallway and said no. He smiled at the memory, shaking his head slightly. "I told you I wasn't going to stay if I couldn't contribute," he said, half defensive, half amused. "I didn't want to move in just because it was easy." The woman laughed softly at that, the kind of laugh that carried no edge. Before she could answer, the child leaned forward. "Mom smiled," she said confidently, "and told him of course he would help. She said that's what people do." The woman laughed again, a little louder this time, not denying it. The days were simple. Groceries were shared, bills discussed without tension. Some nights were quiet, others filled with small talk that didn't need to go anywhere. The child moved freely between rooms, between conversations, as if this arrangement had always existed. There were still pauses, still moments of caution, but they no longer felt like barriers. Just reminders. The man sometimes thought about how close he'd come to walking away for good, and how staying hadn't been about comfort, but about respect, both given and returned. Nothing about their life felt like a promise made too quickly. It felt like something chosen, again and again, in ordinary ways.